If he ever ends up back in the United States, he would immediately be deported again.
Karoline Leavitt yesterday was having a day. She was going through it, trying to explain away Donald Trump's abject incompetence.
Once a rising star within the Fox News orbit, Karoline Leavitt's trajectory now faces heavy backlash. After a highly publicized on-air breakdown, the network's unwavering support appears to actually waver, leaving many to question what went down behind the scenes. Let's dissect the unraveling relationship between Leavitt and Fox News, examining the escalating tensions and the pivotal moment that triggered this drastic change in allegiance. Was this an isolated incident or a symptom of deeper fractures? The answers may surprise you. The breakdown and its aftermath. The relationship between Fox News and the Trump administration has historically been one characterized by remarkable synergy and mutual support. However, recent events involving White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt have potentially signaled a dramatic shift in this long-standing alliance. The most significant event is the on-air breakdown that occurred on May 1st, 2025, during one of Leavitt's press briefings. According to reports from the Irish Star, Fox News cut away from the coverage due to audio difficulties, with delayed speech causing an echo. This technical issue led Fox News to cut away as Leavitt began her opening remarks. People have wondered if this was a genuine technical problem or an editorial decision to censor or critique Leavitt. The timing was unfortunate, as it occurred just as the briefing was beginning, preventing viewers from hearing Leavitt's prepared remarks. An ex-post from @CallToActivism noted, "The White House is holding a press briefing right now, so Trump can watch it on TV, but their audio is messed up, so Fox News has already pulled away." This suggests that the cutaway might have been due to technical issues rather than a deliberate editorial choice to undermine Leavitt. Regardless, ex-users quickly went online to make banter on the situation. One tweeted, "The ultimate broadcast, full picture, zero substance." Another used the audio blunder to make a dig at Leavitt, saying, "This is what I hear every time she opens her mouth." Other ex-users also witnessed the brief pause on the channel and were not impressed. White House team, quick, give the boss a briefing to boost his mood. AV gremlins, pull every cable at once. Fox News, and we're out. Result, the only thing Trump gets to watch is the sound of silence in HD. One X account commented, "This isn't the first time Karoline Leavitt has blundered on national TV. For instance, on March 19th, 2025, during a press briefing, Leavitt was corrected by NBC News' Garrett Hawk for mistakenly claiming Judge James Boasberg, who had blocked some Trump deportation efforts, was appointed by Barack Obama when he was actually appointed by George W. Bush and elevated by Obama." Another notable moment occurred during a February 11th, 2025 interview on Fox News with Sean Hannity, where Leavitt made a grammatical error saying, "President Trump promised voters on the campaign that he was going to make our government more efficiency instead of more efficient." While this was mocked on social media, with grammarians reacting with "huh," there is no evidence that Hannity or other Fox hosts criticized her during the interview. A YouTube video titled "Karoline Leavitt Left Fox Hosts Confused, her outrageous lies during interview," from April 24th, 2025, suggests an interview where hosts were confused by her statements. The video refers to incidents where Leavitt made claims about hundreds of countries coming to the negotiating table and defended Trump's tariff policies. While the Fox hosts did appear uncomfortable with some of her claims, this doesn't constitute a dramatic turning on.
Watch this.
Let me be clear, there will be no unilateral reduction in tariffs against China. The president has made it clear.
You caught that, right? The first time I heard it, I wasn't sure what the hell she was talking about. She says, "Let me be clear." The president has been very clear.
Additionally, viewer criticism has been noted, such as an April 7th, 2025 report where viewers slammed her late-night interview on Fox News, calling it eerie and comparing it to Russian TV. Another reaction that has been duly noted by the network. Despite these incidents, other articles and videos continue to highlight her role positively. For example, an article titled "Conservatives Rally Around Rock Star Leavitt After First White House Briefing, Competence is Back," from January 28th, 2025, presented her in a highly favorable light. Another piece, "Who is Karoline Leavitt?" New Fox Nation special chronicles the rise of the Gen Z press secretary, from February 18th, 2025, explored her rise positively. As recently as May 1st, 2025, Leavitt appeared to be handling a different kind of pressure well during a press briefing. When asked about Secretary Hegseth's status following various controversies.
But the president, of course, is aware of the passing of the Pope and did put out a statement this morning, and we're praying for the millions of Christians around the world who loved the Pope and admired him this morning.
Did the president have any conversation?
Has the president read that story or been briefed on the New York Times story? And combining kind of that and all the leadership changes depending on over the last week, does the president still have confidence in Secretary Hegseth?
The president absolutely has confidence in Secretary Hegseth.
One significant development that may have strained the relationship was Leavitt's initiative to open White House briefings to new media outlets. On April 28, 2025, she held what she described as the first influencer briefing, specifically tailored for pro-Trump influencers and content creators. During this briefing, she explicitly stated, "As I promised in my first briefing as press secretary back in January, the Trump White House will speak to all media outlets and personalities, not just the legacy media who traditionally has covered this institution. All journalists, outlets, and voices have a seat at the table now." This initiative, while innovative, has generated debate over media access and balance, potentially creating tension with traditional media outlets like Fox News. The administration's decision to remove wire services like the Associated Press from the daily press pool rotation and ban the AP from coverage in February for refusing to call the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America indicates a shift in media strategy that might impact even friendly outlets like Fox News. When asked about immigration statistics,
Sure.
Caroline, I had two questions, one on immigration and one on China. First on immigration. Roughly how many illegal immigrants and aliens do we have in our country, and how many does the administration plan on deporting?
Sure. Well, you'd have to ask the Department of Homeland Security for a specific number, but we suspect it's definitely in the millions, perhaps upwards of 20 million people that were allowed into the country illegally by the previous administration. And the president and his team are focused on deporting as many as we possibly can, and they are moving as quickly as possible.
in an Axios event on April 25, 2025, Leavitt defended these changes to press access, stating, "It's not about ideology, it's about increasing the wide array of outlets that have access. We view them as opening access to more outlets, more voices, more news, journalists, and outlets." She connected this to Trump's 2024 campaign, which relied heavily on non-traditional media, propelling him back to office. This strategy also includes inviting new media into regular briefings, with a study by Media Matters noting that through April 22, 2025, Leavitt called on right-wing outlets 41% of the time, with 4 of the 5 most called upon reporters representing such organizations. This shift in media strategy could potentially create friction even with traditionally supportive networks like Fox News if they perceive themselves as losing exclusive access or influence. While individual hosts may have expressed discomfort with some of her statements and technical issues have disrupted coverage, the network's overall editorial stance appears to remain supportive. As press secretary, Leavitt faces challenges similar to those of her predecessors. Throughout history, White House press secretaries have navigated controversies, from Ron Ziegler's handling of Watergate to Jay Carney's response to the Benghazi attack. These roles often place individuals in difficult positions, requiring them to defend administration policies while maintaining credibility with the press and public. What makes Leavitt's situation unique is her youth and the rapidly evolving media landscape she must navigate. At 27, she is significantly younger than most of her predecessors, bringing both fresh perspectives and less experience to the role. Additionally, her tenure coincides with a period of profound transformation in media consumption, with traditional outlets like Fox News competing with social media, podcasts, and independent content creators for influence and audience attention. Looking ahead, several factors may influence the future relationship between Fox News and Leavitt. The administration's media strategy, including its engagement with alternative outlets, could either complement or compete with Fox News's coverage. Leavitt's performance in future briefings and interviews, particularly her ability to maintain factual accuracy and effective communication, will also play a crucial role. And broader political developments, including policy outcomes and public opinion, will shape the context in which this relationship continues to evolve. To fully understand the dynamic between Fox News and Karoline Leavitt, it's important to examine her remarkable rise to become the youngest White House press secretary in American history at just 27 years old. Her meteoric ascent through Republican politics provides crucial context for the events we've been discussing. The rise of Karoline Leavitt, America's youngest press secretary. Born on August 24, 1997 in Atkinson, New Hampshire, Karoline Claire Leavitt grew up in a Catholic family with strong business ties to their community. Her family owned both an ice cream stand and a used truck dealership in Plaistow, giving her early exposure to small business operations and community engagement. This upbringing in a working-class setting would later become a cornerstone of her political identity. Leavitt's education took place at St. Anselm College, a liberal arts institution in Manchester, New Hampshire, where she graduated in 2019 with a Bachelor of Arts in Communications and a minor in Political Science. Her time at college proved formative for her political development. She was notably active in campus politics, founding the St. Anselm Broadcasting Club and writing for the school newspaper, often defending Trump's policies even during her college years. In one particularly revealing article for her college newspaper, she criticized what she termed liberal media for being unjust, unfair, and sometimes just plain old false. This early criticism of mainstream media foreshadowed her future role defending the Trump administration against what she and many Trump supporters perceive as media bias. What makes Leavitt's story particularly remarkable is that she was the first in her family to earn an undergraduate degree, marking a significant personal achievement that has undoubtedly influenced her perspective on education and opportunity in America. Her political career began in earnest with an internship at the White House in 2018 during Trump's first term. Initially, working as a presidential writer in the Office of Presidential Correspondence, she quickly climbed the ranks. By June 2020, at just 22 years old, she had been appointed Assistant White House Press Secretary under Kayleigh McEnany, where she served until the end of Trump's first administration in January 2021. During this period, Leavitt was part of the team handling communication during critical events, including the COVID-19 pandemic. Interestingly, she herself tested positive for COVID-19 after attending Amy Coney Barrett's Supreme Court nomination ceremony in the White House Rose Garden on September 26, 2020, which was later identified as a super spreader event. This personal experience with the pandemic came at a time when the administration's handling of COVID-19 was under intense scrutiny. Following Trump's defeat in the 2020 presidential election, Leavitt briefly worked as communications director for New York Representative Elise Stefanik, gaining valuable experience in congressional communications. But her ambitions extended beyond staff roles. In July 2021, at just 23 years old, Leavitt launched her own congressional campaign for New Hampshire's 1st congressional district. Running from her father's used truck dealership in Plaistow, she positioned herself as one of the nation's first Generation Z congressional candidates. Despite initially trailing at 7% in early polls, she managed an impressive upset by winning the Republican primary in September 2022 with 25,888 votes, 34.6%. Although she raised an impressive $3.8 million for her campaign, she ultimately lost the general election to incumbent Democrat Chris Pappas, receiving 142,229 votes, 45.9%. This defeat, however, did not derail her political trajectory. In fact, Trump reportedly told her, "They cheated you out of it," referring to her congressional loss, and expressed gladness about her current role, suggesting he saw greater potential for her in his administration. Leavitt's continued involvement in Trump's political orbit proved crucial to her rapid rise. After her congressional campaign, she worked for MAGA Inc., a pro-Trump super PAC, and was featured in a Project 2025 video, reinforcing her loyalty to the movement. From January 2024, she served as the National Press Secretary for Trump's 2024 presidential campaign, holding press conferences during significant events like Trump's hush money trial. Her effective communication skills and unwavering loyalty to Trump's messaging caught the president's attention. On November 15, 2024, President-elect Trump appointed her as White House Press Secretary, praising her as smart, tough, and a highly effective communicator. She assumed office on January 20th, 2025, making history as the youngest person ever to hold this prestigious position, breaking the record previously held by Ronald Ziegler, who served at age 29 under President Nixon. Leavitt's first press briefing on January 28th, 2025, signaled significant changes in the White House's approach to media relations. She announced the restoration of press passes for 440 journalists and introduced a groundbreaking initiative to allow independent creators, including podcasters and social media influencers, to apply for White House press credentials. This move reflected her strategy to engage younger audiences and adapt to the changing media landscape of 2025. During this debut briefing, she stated, "It is a priority of this White House to honor the First Amendment, and it is a fact that Americans are consuming their news media from various different platforms, especially young people. And as the youngest press secretary in history, thanks to President Trump, I take great pride in opening up this room to new media voices to share the president's message with as many Americans as possible." Beyond her professional achievements, Leavitt's personal life has also attracted public interest. She married Nicholas Riccio, a 59-year-old real estate developer, on January 4th, 2025, after announcing their engagement on Christmas 2023. Their 32-year age gap has been a topic of public discussion, with Leavitt describing it as an atypical love story during an appearance on The Megyn Kelly Show in February 2025. The couple shares a son, Nico, born on July 10th, 2024. In a demonstration of her dedication to her role, Leavitt returned to work just 4 days after giving birth, following Trump's assassination attempt on July 13th, 2024, in Butler, Pennsylvania. Leavitt's public persona has been described in media profiles as radiant and apple-cheeked, with a delivery both righteous and smug. Steve Bannon, a prominent Trump ally, called her tough as boot leather, and she hosted his War Room show nearly a dozen times, further solidifying her media presence within Trump-aligned circles. Her political stances align strongly with traditional conservative values and the America First agenda championed by Trump. She identifies as pro-life, pro-liberty, and pro-gun, opposing what she calls radical ideologies in education, such as critical race theory. On immigration, she advocates for strict border control and completing Trump's border wall. She has also been vocal about election integrity issues, having publicly stated her belief that there were irregularities in the 2020 election. Leavitt's communication style is marked by a confident, sometimes combative approach when defending the administration's policies. This approach has made her both a darling of conservative media and a frequent target for criticism from liberal outlets. The factors behind Leavitt's selection as press secretary provide insight into Trump's media strategy for his second term. Her prior experience in the White House, her unwavering loyalty to Trump and the MAGA movement, her exceptional communication skills, and her personal connection with Trump all contributed to her appointment. Chris Leavitt, Trump's campaign co-manager, reportedly stated, "I never gave it a second thought. It was always going to be Karoline," indicating strong internal support for her selection. Her college mentor, Neil Levesque, described her as probably one of the best students I've ever seen in front of a television camera, noting her razor-sharp answers and cheerful optimism. Leavitt's role as press secretary involves managing the White House's relationship with the media, conducting daily briefings, coordinating with other offices, handling crisis communications, and advocating for the president's programs. In today's polarized media environment, this role has become increasingly challenging, requiring both strategic thinking and quick reflexes to respond to rapidly developing news cycles. In the rapidly changing landscape of political communication, the relationship between press secretaries and media outlets remains a fascinating window into broader trends. Leavitt's historic role as the youngest White House press secretary and her navigation of traditional and emerging media platforms offers valuable insights into the challenges and opportunities facing political communicators in 2025. The role of White House press secretary has always been challenging, balancing loyalty to the president with the need for transparency with the media. Historical incidents like Ron Ziegler's Watergate statements and Kayleigh McEnany's COVID-19 defenses highlight the inherent tensions of the position. Leavitt's experience reflects these perennial challenges, while adding new dimensions related to her age, the political climate of 2025, and the transformed media ecosystem. For Fox News, the challenge is equally complex. As a network that has historically aligned with Republican administrations, it must balance support for Trump and his team with maintaining journalistic standards and responding to viewer expectations. The occasional tensions with Leavitt reflect this balancing act rather than a definitive shift in editorial stance. What we need to get into is these tensions between Fox News and Karoline Leavitt. Let's explore the series of controversial incidents that have tested this relationship, incidents that may have contributed to the current tensions, however mild they may be. The controversial incidents that tested the Fox News relationship. Fox News, founded in 1996 by Rupert Murdoch, has long been recognized for its conservative political leanings. Academic studies have consistently shown that Fox News has a significant impact on Republican voting patterns. For instance, a 2007 study by Della Vigna and Kaplan found that Fox News increased Republican vote shares by 0.4 to 0.7 percentage points in towns where it was available. Martin and Urokoglu's 2017 research similarly estimated a 0.3-point increase in Republican votes for viewers watching an additional 2.5 minutes of Fox News weekly. The network has maintained a predominantly conservative audience, with a 2019 Pew Research Center survey finding that 65% of Republicans and Republican-leaning independents trust Fox News for political news, compared to only 16% of Democrats and Democratic-leaning independents. This established relationship between Fox News and conservative politics makes any tensions between the network and a Republican administration particularly noteworthy. Let's explore the incidents that have tested this relationship, starting with what many consider to be the most significant: Leavitt's clash with an AP reporter over tariffs, which was subsequently discussed on Fox News. On March 11, 2025, during a White House press briefing, Associated Press reporter Josh Boak questioned Leavitt about President Trump's tariffs, asking, "I'm sorry, have you ever paid a tariff? Because I have. They don't get charged on foreign companies. They get charged on the importers." This question challenged Leavitt's earlier assertion that tariffs were benefiting the American people. Leavitt responded defensively, stating, "Ultimately, when we have fair and balanced trade, I think it's insulting that you're trying to test my knowledge of economics. I now regret giving a question to the Associated Press." She claimed tariffs are a tax cut for the American people, a statement that economists widely criticized. On March 17, 2025, Leavitt appeared on Fox News' Sunday Morning Futures to discuss the clash, criticizing Boak for failing to understand Trump's long-term economic strategy. She argued that tariffs would bring revenue and wealth, enabling further tax cuts. However, rather than the expected full-throated defense from the Fox News host, there were signs of skepticism. This incident became even more contentious when, on April 29, 2025, Leavitt criticized Amazon for announcing they would show tariff prices next to products, calling it a hostile and political action. This triggered further debates about the administration's economic policies, with some Fox News commentators quietly questioning the administration's stance. The tension escalated further on April 28, 2025, when Leavitt did not rule out arresting Supreme Court justices during a press briefing. When Fox News reporter Peter Doocy asked, "As you guys look at other judges, would you ever arrest somebody higher up on the judicial food chain, like a federal judge or even a Supreme Court justice?" Leavitt responded with a concerning lack of clarity. "That's a hypothetical question. Again, I defer you to the Department of Justice for individuals that they are looking at or individual cases. But let's be clear about what this judge did. She obstructed federal law enforcement who were looking for an illegal alien in her courthouse. She showed that illegal alien the door to evade law enforcement officials. That is a clear-cut case of obstruction." This failure to definitively rule out such an extreme action raised concerns even among some Fox News commentators about the administration's respect for judicial independence and separation of powers. Leavitt's verbal missteps have also created awkward moments for Fox News hosts. During a press briefing on March 17, 2025, she made what many perceived as a Freudian slip, stating, "We want to restore the Department of Justice to an institution that focuses on fighting law and order, instead of fighting for law and order." This slip was widely interpreted as accidentally revealing the administration's true stance, creating uncomfortable moments for Fox News hosts attempting to defend her. In another incident on March 19, 2025, Leavitt incorrectly called U.S. District Judge James Boasberg a Democratic activist for blocking the Alien Enemies Act. She was publicly corrected by a reporter who pointed out that Boasberg was actually appointed by George W. Bush and elevated by Obama. This embarrassing factual error made it difficult for Fox News commentators to defend her credibility. Perhaps one of the most significant tests of the relationship came during Leavitt's defense of Jan. 6 pardons. On January 21, 2025, during an appearance on Fox and Friends, Leavitt defended President Trump's pardon of over 1,600 individuals charged with crimes related to the January 6, 2021 Capitol riot, stating, "I don't think it's causing much controversy." President Trump campaigned on this promise. It should come as no surprise that he delivered on it on day one, and there are people who have been held hostage, as President Trump says, by the Biden DOJ. This defense came despite reports that some of the pardoned individuals had criminal records, including rape and domestic violence, creating a morally complex situation that some Fox News hosts seemed visibly uncomfortable discussing.
Karoline Leavitt yesterday was having a day. She was going through it, trying to explain away Donald Trump's abject incompetence, his public incompetence. And this specific set of clips I'm getting ready to show you are about, well, it's 2 clips, are about tariffs. Of course, because Donald Trump is now backing away. He's retreating from his position. He's just a coward who can't handle the heat. He realizes now everybody gets the jig is up. Everybody understands who he is. Even Republicans are waking up to the fact that his tariff policy is costing them thousands and thousands of dollars in retirement.
Beyond these specific incidents, there have been mounting concerns about the accuracy of Leavitt's statements. During a Fox News appearance, she claimed that hundreds of countries have come to the table to negotiate trade deals, despite there being only 195 countries recognized by the United Nations. This mathematical impossibility put Fox News hosts in the awkward position of either correcting their guest, the White House press secretary, or allowing a blatant factual error to stand unchallenged.
And President Trump has brought hundreds of countries now from around the world to the negotiating table. We have 18 proposals on paper from nations around the world who recognize that they have, in fact, been ripping off the United States. And there's a president in the Oval Office right now who is no longer going to tolerate it.
There was also a tense exchange with CNN reporter Caitlin Collins on March 26, 2025, over a security breach involving a Signal Group chat leak. When Collins attempted to ask follow-up questions about whether President Trump felt misled by his advisors regarding the classification of the chat's content, Leavitt abruptly cut her off, saying, "Caitlin, I am not taking your follow-up," and repeated it more sternly when Collins persisted. Leavitt also launched a personal attack on Jeffrey Goldberg, editor-in-chief of The Atlantic, who had reported on the security breach, describing him as an anti-Trump hater and highlighting his and his wife's Democratic affiliations. This aggressive approach to media criticism has created challenges for Fox News hosts attempting to maintain journalistic credibility while supporting the administration. On April 7, 2025, Leavitt appeared on a late-night Fox News show with host Jesse Waters, discussing the Supreme Court's decision to restart Trump's deportations under the Alien Enemies Act. She called it a massive legal victory and a massive victory for our constitutional republic. But her comments drew criticism from viewers, with some comparing her rhetoric to Russian TV. This created a challenging dynamic for Fox News, balancing its support for the administration with viewer feedback. These controversies have placed Fox News in an increasingly difficult position. While the network has historically been supportive of Trump administration figures, Leavitt's repeated factual errors, confrontational approach to reporters, and controversial policy defenses have created tension. Fox News hosts have found themselves in the uncomfortable position of either challenging the White House press secretary, potentially alienating their core audience, or defending statements that undermine their own credibility. Online forums reflect this growing divide. On Reddit's r conservative, some users continue to defend Leavitt, with one comment saying, "Karoline was an excellent pick. She's always one step ahead of the media gotcha questions." However, on more mainstream and liberal forums, criticism has been much harsher, with comments describing her responses as straight-up stupid mean girls stuff. This division in public opinion reflects the broader challenge facing Fox News: how to maintain its relationship with the Trump administration, while preserving its journalistic credibility and responding to viewer concerns about accuracy and tone. What we can conclude with confidence is that the relationship between Fox News and Karoline Leavitt continues to evolve, shaped by specific incidents, broader trends, and the strategic choices of both parties. Rather than a dramatic turning on following a single breakdown, we're witnessing the ongoing negotiation of a complex political and media relationship in a rapidly changing information environment. As viewers and citizens, our task is to approach these developments with critical thinking and an understanding of the complex factors at play. By looking beyond sensational headlines to examine the evidence and context, we can gain a more nuanced understanding of the relationship between the White House press secretary and one of America's most influential news networks. The story of Karoline Leavitt and Fox News is still being written, with each press briefing, interview, and news cycle adding new chapters to this unfolding narrative. What remains certain is that this relationship will continue to provide valuable insights into the intersection of media, politics, and communication in contemporary America. If you enjoyed this video, check out our other awesome videos on the channel. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Let me be clear, there will be no unilateral reduction in tariffs against China. The president has made it clear.
Karoline Leavitt's recent live interview was nothing short of a tragedy. It went off the rails almost instantly. She tried to outsmart the media, but instead ended up completely embarrassing herself on a national stage. From what most consider to be inaccurate claims during a White House briefing, to desperate attempts to spin the narrative, she practically handed her critics all the ammunition they needed. Today we're breaking down exactly how it all unraveled, and why it's exploding across the headlines. The rise of controversy. In the turbulent landscape of American politics, few figures have emerged as quickly and controversially as Karoline Leavitt. Today, we're examining a situation that has captivated political commentators and everyday Americans alike. White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt's recent press appearance that many are describing as nothing short of catastrophic. As the youngest press secretary in American history at just 27 years old, Leavitt has been a lightning rod for both admiration and scrutiny since assuming her role in January 2025. Before we dissect the disaster that unfolded, it's essential to understand the figure at the center of this political storm. Karoline Leavitt rose quickly through Republican ranks, working in the first Trump administration before an unsuccessful congressional run in New Hampshire in 2022. Despite that electoral defeat, her unwavering loyalty to former President Trump secured her a position in his 2024 campaign and ultimately the prestigious role of White House press secretary. Her rapid ascent has been remarkable, from a small-town New Hampshire upbringing to one of the most visible positions in American politics. Leavitt's communication style has been characterized by a combative approach toward traditional media outlets since day one. In her very first briefing on January 28, 2025, she set a confrontational tone, declaring that Americans' trust in mass media has fallen to a record low and emphasizing the inclusion of what she termed new media, podcasters, influencers, and conservative outlets that might be more sympathetic to the administration's messaging. This strategic shift was immediately evident when she called on Axios's Mike Allen and Breitbart's Matt Boyle before legacy outlets like the Associated Press, breaking decades of protocol and signaling a new era in White House communications. The message was clear. The traditional press would no longer be given the deference they'd grown accustomed to over generations. But what exactly happened during the briefing that has everyone talking? Let's examine the pivotal moments that transformed a routine press conference into what critics are calling a complete meltdown. The controversy centers around what has become known as the Signalgate scandal, a significant security breach where top Trump administration officials accidentally included the Atlantic's editor-in-chief Jeffrey Goldberg in a Signal group chat discussing sensitive military strike plans against the Houthis in Yemen. The leaked messages, published by The Atlantic, revealed conversations about potential military operations, creating a firestorm of questions about the administration's information security protocols. On March 26, 2025, Leavitt held what would become an infamous press conference lasting less than 25 minutes. She began by speaking for under 10 minutes before taking questions that quickly centered on the leaked war plans. From the outset, her defensive posture was evident as she dismissed the Atlantic story as sensationalized and accused Goldberg of being an anti-Trump hater and a registered Democrat. What followed was a masterclass in how not to handle a crisis. Leavitt claimed no classified information had been leaked and that National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, who had inadvertently added Goldberg to the chat, had taken responsibility. She mentioned an investigation was underway but provided virtually no specifics, a response that journalists found woefully inadequate given the gravity of the situation. The tension in the room escalated dramatically when CNN's Caitlin Collins attempted to probe deeper, asking if President Trump felt misled by his national security advisors. Leavitt's response was immediate and harsh. Visibly frustrated, she snapped, "I have now been asked and answered this question 3 times by the both of you," refusing to allow a follow-up question and quickly calling on another reporter. This exchange was widely reported as a loss of composure that set the tone for what was to come. As the questioning continued, and it became clear that journalists weren't going to let the Signalgate issue drop, Leavitt made a decision that would define the briefing in public memory. After realizing most questions focused on the scandal, she abruptly ended the conference, citing a need to avoid counter-programming Vice President J.D. Vance's upcoming speech. She also mentioned Trump's scheduled appearances later that day, hastily adding, "Sorry it's a bit shorter today, guys," before making a quick exit from the podium. This premature departure was immediately characterized across social media platforms as her running away from difficult questions. One user on X wrote, "Karoline Leavitt got scared and just ran off the stage after getting grilled by reporters about the Signal chat." Another commented, "Karoline Leavitt practically ran out of that press conference after getting hammered by reporters." These sentiments framed her as unprepared and overwhelmed by the scrutiny she faced. The media response was equally unforgiving. Outlets like the Irish Star and the Mirror US described the event as a humiliation, emphasizing Leavitt's apparent inability to handle tough questions. Some forums even used harsh language, with users calling her a rat running away from danger and criticizing her for gaslighting the public about the leaked plans. Perhaps most damaging to Leavitt's credibility was her insistence that the leaked messages were not war plans, but merely attack plans, a distinction that many viewed as meaningless semantic wordplay. Critics, including the Mirror US, pointed out that Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth had posted a timeline of the bombing in the chat, directly contradicting her attempts to downplay the severity of the leak. The fallout continued days later. On April 1st, 2025, Leavitt provided what many considered an inadequate update on Signalgate, stating, "This case has been closed here at the White House as far as we are concerned, and that unspecified steps had been taken to prevent future leaks." This vague response only fueled further criticism, with commentators on social media labeling her the resident minister of propaganda for what they perceived as a transparent attempt to sweep a serious national security concern under the rug. The incidents we've explored thus far paint a picture of a press secretary under siege, struggling to maintain control of the narrative amid a major scandal. But the story doesn't end here. In fact, it gets considerably more complicated as Leavitt faced additional controversies in subsequent briefings. How did she handle accusations about spreading misinformation? What happened when she was confronted about controversial immigration policies? And did she manage to recover from her initial stumbles, or did the situation continue to deteriorate? The unraveling. The aftermath of the Signalgate debacle created a challenging environment for Leavitt, with journalists now more determined than ever to hold the administration accountable. Rather than adopting a more measured approach, however, Leavitt doubled down on her combative style, leading to several memorable confrontations that quickly went viral. One particularly notable incident occurred on April 15, 2025, when Leavitt faced questions about the deportation of Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia, a Salvadoran immigrant with protected legal status. Instead of addressing the legitimate concerns about this case, Leavitt responded with mockery, saying, "Based on the sensationalism of many of the people in this room, you would think we deported a candidate for Father of the Year." This dismissive comment might have been provocative enough on its own, but Leavitt went further, accusing Garcia of human trafficking without providing any evidence to support this serious allegation. This claim immediately drew backlash from advocacy groups and legal experts, with social media users like @CallToActivism describing her statements as a full-blown meltdown of lies. The situation situation deteriorated further the following day. On April 16, 2025, in what observers described as bizarre behavior, Leavitt initially asked if reporters had questions, but then refused to take any, leading to perceptions that she was tired and defeated. One ex-user, at Lippy Addiction, suggested she was at her breaking point, a sentiment that gained traction as video clips of the awkward moments circulated online. What made these incidents particularly damaging was the growing perception that Leavitt wasn't just struggling under pressure, but actively engaging in deliberate misinformation. Posts on X accused her of using planted stooges in the press room to field softball questions, a claim that gained credibility when the New York Times published an analysis highlighting her reliance on friendly media outlets. Critics described this tactic as authoritarian, with one social media comment stating, "This is how authoritarian states are run." The controversies weren't limited to immigration and media management. Leavitt's handling of economic policy, particularly regarding tariffs, also became a flashpoint. In a Fox News appearance that quickly went viral, she made claims about international trade negotiations that left even the typically friendly Fox hosts visibly confused. In this remarkable exchange, Leavitt attempted to clarify the administration's tariff policy, but instead created more confusion with contradictory statements. The Fox News host directly asked about the timetable for reducing tariffs against China, noting that Trump had been ambiguous about it.
Let me be clear, there will be no unilateral reduction in tariffs against China. The president has made it clear China needs to make a deal with the United States of America, and we are optimistic that will happen.
What made this exchange particularly noteworthy was Leavitt's circular logic, claiming to provide clarity while essentially restating the same ambiguous position that prompted the question in the first place. The Fox host's tepid response, "Okay, well, markets seem to be watching every bit of it," reflected the growing sense that even media outlets typically friendly to the administration were finding it difficult to extract straightforward answers from the press secretary. But perhaps the most eyebrow-raising moment came when Leavitt made an astonishing claim about the number of countries engaged in trade negotiations with the United States.
Too long. And President Trump has brought hundreds of countries now from around the world to the negotiating table. We have 18 proposals on paper from nations around the world who recognize that they have in fact been ripping off the United States.
This statement was immediately flagged by fact checkers as mathematically impossible, given that there are only 195 countries in the world recognized by the United Nations, 193 member states plus 2 non-member observer states. Even accounting for territories or autonomous regions, the claim of hundreds of countries engaging in negotiations was simply not credible. The accuracy issues extended to other policy areas as well. When questioned about immigration statistics during a briefing, Leavitt provided figures that seemed to lack any firm basis in official data.
Well, you'd have to ask the Department of Homeland Security for a specific number, but we suspect it's definitely in the millions, perhaps upwards of 20 million people that were allowed into the country illegally by the previous administration. And the president and his team are focused on deporting as many as we possibly can, and they are moving as quickly as possible.
When pressed to provide specific numbers on how many undocumented immigrants were in the country, Leavitt first deflected by saying, "You'd have to ask the Department of Homeland Security," but then immediately offered a speculative figure of perhaps upwards of 20 million people, a number significantly higher than most credible estimates. This pattern of deflection, followed by unsubstantiated claims, became a hallmark of her briefing style, leaving journalists and viewers alike questioning the reliability of the information being presented. The cumulative effect of these missteps was a growing crisis of credibility. Even conservative media outlets, which had initially celebrated Leavitt's appointment as a breath of fresh air, began to express concerns about her handling of basic facts. Her youth, once touted as an advantage that brought energy and fresh perspective to the role, was increasingly cited as a liability, with critics questioning whether she had the experience necessary to navigate the complexities of White House communications. Adding to the pressure was Leavitt's implementation of controversial changes to press room protocols. In a move that drew sharp criticism from media organizations, she announced that the White House would take control of the briefing room seating chart, stripping the White House Correspondents Association of its traditional role in this process. This decision, which appeared designed to favor pro-Trump and digital-first outlets over legacy media like CNN and NBC, was characterized by critics as a calculated effort to humiliate and sideline traditional journalism. Leavitt defended the change by stating, "It's not about ideology, it's about increasing the wide array of outlets that have access." But many viewed this explanation with skepticism, especially given her previous comments disparaging legacy media. The controversy intensified when it was reported that certain outlets, including the Associated Press, had been barred from the press pool for reportedly ignoring Trump's executive order renaming the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. These structural changes, combined with her confrontational rhetoric and factual inconsistencies created what many observers described as a perfect storm. Rather than fulfilling the traditional role of the press secretary to serve as a bridge between the administration and the public through the media, Leavitt seemed to be constructing walls, limiting access to those deemed friendly while alienating outlets with larger audiences and established journalistic credentials. The situation reached a new level of absurdity on April 17, 2025, when Chinese envoy Zhang Zhisheng pointed out on social media that the red dress with lace that Leavitt wore during a press briefing was made in China, a deeply ironic twist given the administration's tough rhetoric on Chinese imports and tariffs. Weibo posts from Chinese textile workers claiming to have produced the dress in Mabu, China, went viral, with Zhang stating, "Accusing China is business, buying China is life." This fashion faux pas, while seemingly trivial compared to policy matters, became emblematic for critics of what they perceived as the administration's hypocritical stance on trade. As these controversies accumulated, the pressure on Leavitt intensified. Her responses became increasingly defensive, and her body language during briefings suggested growing discomfort. The young press secretary, who had once been lauded for her confidence and poise, now appeared at times to be struggling to maintain her composure in the face of relentless questioning. Yet the worst was still to come. Soon, a series of dramatic incidents pushed the situation from bad to catastrophic, culminating in what many political observers now describe as one of the most disastrous periods for White House communications in recent memory. The question was no longer whether Leavitt could recover her footing, but rather how much more damage would be done before a change of course became inevitable. The aftermath. The combination of the Signalgate debacle, her confrontational media strategy, and the growing list of factual inaccuracies had created a perfect storm of credibility issues. But rather than a course correction, what followed was a series of incidents that further undermined her standing and transformed what might have been salvageable missteps into what many now view as an unmitigated disaster. On April 19, 2025, in what should have been a routine ceremony, Leavitt abruptly ended a briefing due to a medical emergency during Dr. Mehmet Oz's swearing in as administrator for the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. Witnesses described her shouting "press out" to evacuate reporters, a moment characterized as panicked by media outlets. While this response may have been appropriate given the circumstances, the optics of yet another prematurely terminated briefing reinforced the narrative of a press secretary struggling to maintain control. The following week brought no respite. On April 22, 2025, Leavitt found herself defending Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth amid reports of dismissed Pentagon officials leaking against him. When asked directly if President Trump still had confidence in Hegseth despite the controversies, she responded with unequivocal support.
No travel plans at this time. Doesn't mean it's not happening. I just don't have anything to share. But the president, of course, is aware of the passing of the Pope and did put out a statement this morning, and we're praying for the millions of Christians around the world who loved the Pope and admired him this morning. The president absolutely has confidence in Secretary Hegseth. I spoke to him about it this morning, and he stands strongly behind him.
This expression of support was followed by more detailed comments when a reporter pressed her on her claim that the entire Pentagon is working against Secretary Hegseth, despite the fact that the fired officials were Hegseth's own appointees.
They were Pentagon employees who leaked against their boss to news agencies in this room, and it's been clear since day one from this administration that we are not going to tolerate individuals who leak to the mainstream media, particularly when it comes to sensitive information. And the Secretary of Defense is doing a tremendous job, and he is bringing monumental change to the Pentagon.
Her characterization of the fired officials as disloyal leakers contradicted reports that they were part of Hegseth's inner circle, raising questions about her grasp of the situation or willingness to present an accurate picture. More troubling was her blanket dismissal of leaks to the mainstream media as inherently problematic, regardless of the substance or public interest in the information being revealed. This stance on leaks appeared particularly hypocritical given the administration's own challenges with information security, as exemplified by the Signalgate scandal. Leavitt's attempt to frame media reporting based on such leaks as a smear campaign further strained her relationship with journalists who viewed their work as essential accountability reporting. The controversy over Leavitt's handling of press briefings extended beyond specific policy issues to encompass broader concerns about the administration's media strategy. A New York Times analysis claimed she relied on planted stooges in the press room to field softball questions, enabling her to push administration talking points with minimal scrutiny. While this characterization may have been overblown, there were legitimate questions about the systematic favoring of sympathetic outlets and the marginalization of those perceived as critical. Leavitt's personal style also became a subject of discussion. Her practice of praying with staff before briefings briefings, reported by the Washington Post, sparked controversy when social media users characterized it as a vile PR stunt, a criticism that supporters viewed as an unfair attack on her sincere religious expression. This incident highlighted how even aspects of Leavitt's personal approach to the job had become politicized in the intensely partisan environment of Washington. The cumulative effect of these controversies was a press secretary increasingly viewed through polarized lenses. Supporters, particularly on conservative platforms like Fox News and accounts like @Vigilant Fox on X, praised her for shattering media narratives and standing firm against what they perceived as hostile questioning. Critics, meanwhile, saw a propagandist who prioritized loyalty to Trump over factual accuracy and transparent communication with the American public. This division was evident in the contrasting ways her performance was characterized. To her supporters, Leavitt was a bold defender of Trump's agenda who refused to be intimidated by a biased press corps. To her critics, she was unprofessional, evasive, and increasingly overwhelmed by the demands of a job for which she lacked the necessary experience. The reality, as is often the case, was more nuanced than either of these extreme characterizations. Leavitt's youth and relative inexperience were undoubtedly factors in her struggles, but many of the issues stemmed from deliberate strategic choices rather than simple mistakes. The decision to prioritize new media over traditional outlets, the confrontational approach to questioning, and the willingness to make statements without solid factual grounding all reflected a specific vision of how the White House should engage with the press, one that prioritized message discipline and base mobilization over broad public information. This approach had historical precedents in previous administrations, particularly during Trump's first term, when press secretaries like Sean Spicer and Kayleigh McEnany often adopted similarly combative stances toward the media. What distinguished Leavitt's tenure, however, was the intensity and frequency of the confrontations, as well as the backdrop of specific controversies like Signalgate that demanded more nuanced handling. The aftermath of these tumultuous weeks was predictable, a significant erosion of Leavitt's credibility with large segments of the media and public. Even outlets that had initially been supportive began to express reservations about her approach, concerned that the constant controversies were overshadowing the administration's policy agenda. The question of whether she could effectively serve as the public face of the White House became a topic of open speculation. Particularly damaging was the perception that Leavitt was not merely struggling, but actively misleading the public. Her unsubstantiated claim about hundreds of countries engaging in trade negotiations, her unsupported accusation that Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia was involved in human trafficking, and her insistence that the Signalgate messages did not constitute war plans, all contributed to a growing sense that factual accuracy was not a priority in her communications strategy. This approach had real-world consequences beyond the political sphere. Markets reacted to her confusing statements on tariff policies, with investors struggling to discern the administration's actual intentions. International allies and adversaries alike found it difficult to interpret the administration's positions when they were presented in such contradictory terms. And ordinary Americans seeking clear information about government policies were left with more questions than answers after many of her briefings. It's worth noting that Leavitt's struggles occurred against a backdrop of significant policy challenges. The administration was grappling with complex issues related to immigration, trade, national security, and economic policy, all areas where clear, consistent communication was essential. The controversy surrounding her briefing style and factual accuracy made it more difficult to effectively convey the administration's approach to these crucial matters. Some critics have argued that Leavitt's difficulties were symptomatic of broader issues within the administration, a preference for loyalty over expertise, a reflexive hostility toward traditional media, and a willingness to sacrifice factual precision for political advantage. Others have suggested that she was hampered by impossible expectations, tasked with defending controversial policies in a media environment that was predominantly skeptical, if not openly hostile. What's clear is that the series of press briefings we've examined represented a significant failure of political communication, regardless of one's ideological perspective. Even viewed in the most charitable light, these events did not achieve their presumed objective of effectively conveying the administration's positions and priorities to the American public. Instead, they became the story themselves, distracting from, rather than highlighting the work of the government. What is beyond dispute is that these press briefings marked a significant moment in the evolving relationship between the White House and the media, a relationship that remains essential to the functioning of American democracy, regardless of the administration in power or the individuals who represent it to the public. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, be sure to check out the cards popping up on your screen.